1051, I'm on scene. I'll be assuming Caroline Street Command. I got a 2.5-story wood occupied multiple dwelling. I got heavy fire from the second floor, Charlie side. I have an exposure on the Delta side. We have one line stretch not in operation yet. Primary searches are underway. Status of the fire is doubtful. One passing command. I'm on the first line. Service speed advised. We're on scene. 2-story wood frame. I got heavy fire from the Alpha side.
Good afternoon, fans of the Volley Chief. Welcome back for this week's episode. I really appreciate the feedback I got on last week's episode starring Chief DeMarco from the Shelton Fire Department. I think it was a great episode. The thing that shocked me the most was I got a lot of people like the longer episodes. So the 25 minute rule might be going away. That's good news. But let's get to today's show. I have a guest well known in the Fairfield, New Haven County region of Connecticut. Very respected chief, probably one of the top parrot heads in the state, if not New England. So I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. So Chief, take it away.
No problem, Dave. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Plofkin. I'm the current deputy chief in the Wilton Fire Department, which is located in southern Connecticut along the Gold Coast, as we call it. Little background, started in the industry 44 years ago in 1980 as a member of the Nichols Fire Department, which I still am. Have held a number of every position in the organization with the exception of fire commissioner to date. And right now I sit as a captain in the department. Retired out of the Westport Fire Department after 22 years. I was there from 1995 to 2017. And during that tenure of almost my 30 years, my last 30 years, I was a sales rep for a company called Shipman's Fire Equipment and also Shoreline Fire Equipment, which gave me a vested background in the equipment industry and helped me with everything that really gave me a solid base to learn a lot about our industry. And as Dave said, I am a parrot head. I actually have my own tiki bar in my backyard. So it's something I'm extremely proud of. I did that during COVID because I couldn't get to Key West. So
yeah, so I'll have to. Well, we're talking about doing a bourbon episode, so okay. I'll have to let you know when that one is.
I think I'm prepared. I think I have enough.
You have enough
enough on hand. I could sponsor that.
It's funny you mentioned the equipment salesman because it is, a big part of the industry. And I have to say the most difficult part about me switching departments was air packs. Derby, Bridgeport, even, my base, all those departments had Scots. And moving up to Summers, it was MSAs. And that's probably been the most difficult transition out of all of them is to switch to that MSA air pack. I try not to, I try not to bash the MSA. It's different. I'm not used to it, right? You mean, like a lot of people, 25 years of muscle memory of putting on the same pack and then suddenly trying to break that habit. It's been one of the things, but, for a long time, even when I was chief here in Derby, John was our sales rep. I frequently had to pick his brain on stuff. And it was one of the advantages is we knew that you were not just, you weren't just a salesman. When you weren't selling, you were out there doing it. So you had the firsthand knowledge of a lot of the equipment that you sold. And that was something that I think a lot of us really appreciate.
Well, yeah. And for me, it really was a love of labor. I loved my job. I do miss it. I can tell you, but I miss the customers more than I missed the industry. And I also had a leg up on a lot of people. My brother, which a lot of people may know, also was in the industry, started with on-spot tire chains and moved through a bunch of manufacturers, MSA, Task Force Tips, and then moved on to currently now he's the national sales manager for Safe Fleet, which does Elkhart Brass, Foam Pro, and some other lines. So I'm really lucky to have a large background in the industry and have him with support because he had a lot of things that he could help me with. And I got to meet a lot of dynamic people in the fire service. because of it. And one of the things I didn't mention, we have a long line of service. My family in the community here in Trumbull. My dad was a lieutenant. My mom actually was a fire commissioner for 21 years and our district treasurer. And my sister was our first female in the late 80s, which was really a transitional time in the fire service to see how it was very tough for women to get in. And she was our first female. And it was a difficult time for her, but she did an awesome job. So, my family's been a big support. And I got to give him the background for that. And my dad's the guy who inspired me in 1975 when he joined. So
your brother being, I didn't realize he was with Elkhart. I believe, did Elkhart buy Rockwell?
I don't know that.
You don't know. So
I can get you that answer though.
Yeah, because
that's the right answer.
Okay, so oddity about the storms, right? For our car fire line, and I'm actually in the process of writing an article about this. We still use we use the Navy nozzle, and I mean, because we've had the conversation in the past that I still, I'm very passionate about that nozzle with the low velocity fog applicator is the answer to car fires. And how many times do you drive, you drive down the highway, you see a crew, you see a company trying to fight a car fire, and they can't open a hood. They're trying to cut it with the saws. They're trying to, and it's like, there's a piece of technology that was 80 years old.
Yeah.
That does that job better than anything we have nowadays.
Well, it's still available. The Akron Catalog, who still supplies the United States Coast Guard.
But they're brass, I thought.
You can buy them in brass.
Yeah, see, that's the problem, is that they're in brass, so they're paperweights. But I actually tried to bid on one a couple of weeks ago. I saw one on eBay. I bid on it, got outbid.
Well, when I started in Westport, Dave, that was on the front of our engines.
Yeah,
and that's what we used.
They're great tools, and we've maintained ours. We kept it. We have a couple extra spares, and look at what they say with history repeating itself. What's our biggest problem we're confronting right now? Right. We need a nozzle that'll go under a car. Because lithium-ion batteries. Yep. And it's like that, yeah. But anyways, I digress.
Yes.
So our plan tonight was we had two topics we wanted to talk about. The first thing we wanted to talk about was training. I think in a volunteer fire department, it's one of the most difficult, annoyingly difficult things is scheduling training, planning training. I always say it's that we sit down and say, okay, what are we going to do? And we try to come up with a training schedule. And then, people go away, things happen, different calls come in, and that schedule gets shot to heck. Yep. So, what do you do? What is your thoughts, and how do you think you should organize a training division, committee, or group in a volunteer department?
So I'll give you kind of an insight. So 7 or 8 years after I got into our department in Trumbull and Nichols, I was put into a training committee with a couple other gentlemen, some senior people who gave us guidance, and then a bunch of us who were new looking at insights. And believe it or not, one of the first things we came up with was a questionnaire asking the people of the organization what were the things that they wanted to see, and what were the things that they felt weak at, and what were the things that they felt were really items that the department was weak in, what they felt their weakness was. And also, we were looking at what the requirements were, right? So this is the 80s. There weren't a lot of requirements, to be honest with you.
Actually, but, they're theoretically the same.
Right. I mean, there weren't labor laws. There were a lot of things that we didn't have to worry about. And NFPA 1001 and the state of Connecticut really didn't have an outline like we do today. What's the requirements for firefighters? What's the requirements for juniors? What can a junior be limited to? So most recently, and I do this even in Wilton, in October in Wilton, I hand out a training questionnaire. And I ask everybody to get back to me, and I do the same thing in Nichols. We ask the guys we send it out. We ask them to get it back to us in about 4 weeks, and we actually review them. And then I actually review them with the members. to let them know the feedback so that they realize that they're vested in this year's training and that they're being listened to. You know, what state classes do you want? What outside programs would you like us to bring in? And we're pretty fortunate. We have a fairly decent training budget, and we can support some of the financial obligations that people ask for. And we can also send people out. I think there has to be a reward mechanism there for them to buy in. And you also have to find a way to get the newer members to understand that they're going to be the ones to replace you. And you want to make the programs vibrant. You want to make them exciting, but they can't be 3 hours long. You know, I always felt as a company officer, my best training sessions were 30 minutes or less. You know, there was a gentleman who was my neighbor for many years, Ed Amatrudo. Some of the folks listening might remember Ed. And Ed said to me one day, the mind can absorb only what the ass can endure. And I use that as a really good breaking point of how much can people really sit and listen without being active. You have to make the impact. You have to make it easy. You have to make it fun, and you have to make it so they remember the tasks at hand. If it gets long and drawn out, people lose attention. So it's that's one of the things I really try to base my training around is the interest of the people that are my audience, which today is exceptionally difficult. I can have people that are as old as 60, 70 years old in my class, and I can have a 17-year-old. So you better have every facet of media that's capable, and you better have paper. So whatever your impact you're looking to make, because that audience is so diverse.
Yeah, and I agree. I feel like people always think that training has to be this like long drawn out, like a half hour evolution on a piece of equipment that gets the point home and everyone has shown proficiency in. It is better than a 3 hour death by PowerPoint.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
yeah, and and I think another thing we do a lot in the volunteer services, we how do I put this? We short ourselves a lot of training hours. I think of all the times, we talk about the storms. There's the blue table. You're familiar with it.
Yeah, yeah,
In the back of the apparatus floor, that's where we all hang out. But like, I think about all the times we've talked about stuff at the blue table that if I was at work, I would have logged as a drill.
right.
Right? Because, you come down the firehouse, and you're like, oh, hey, what happened yesterday at that call? Oh, well, this, and this, and then we were using that. And like, oh, like, what did you guys do? We tried to do it. And by doing that, you're shorting yourself training hours.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the other problem is record keeping. Record keeping, it can be extremely difficult for us based on the way our departments do it. If it's easy to write up the record, or if you're still using a piece of paper and you can do the generics, skills performed, equipment used, objectives, blah blah blah, and just jot down quickly, it's fairly simple. One of the things the other day I was thinking about, because one of my lieutenants at work sent me a really nice feedback letter on what he was looking for. And 1910-156, right? It's the buzzword. It's what everybody's afraid of. But one of the things that they're asking for is that you write up your lesson plan.
Right.
And one of the things I know we do in our volunteer department is we try to run some day drills every month for those folks who don't or aren't available in the evenings. And we run night drills for everybody else because they're available. Well, the biggest thing is now we kind of try to draw up that document so that I have consistency, right? The biggest threat to our industry is consistency and reaching the audience on a level playing field and making sure everybody's getting the same message when the training goes through, right? And it's something I try to do it if we're doing day training and evening training. Recently with foam, I wrote up an outline. I sent it to all the chiefs. I sent it to the officers, and I sent it to the folks doing the training during the day. And we had a consistent opportunity there to deliver the same program, based on the biases of the individual who's presenting it. It's never going to be exact, but the same content was delivered. And I think that's where you really have to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, and I agree with you about the complicated uh, process by which we record stuff. I mean, we were all using Fireworks, Firehouse, which is gone now, really, ESO, and that's another. I agree, that's a big roadblock to recording training hours in a volunteer department because
Yep.
usually there's one computer. It's in the office. It becomes inconvenient to do that, and I use ESO now,
Yeah.
and like I can go in and pre-set up training that when the members get there, I could have them just sign an iPad that they were there.
Right.
Um, and I've I'm not a computer guy, but I know what simple things you could do. If like I just sometimes wish that I had a little bit more computer knowledge to create. For a while I ran the Derby Fire Department on Microsoft on a Microsoft Drive
Yep.
using Microsoft, Google, I'm sorry, on a Google Drive, Google Forms, Google Sheets, and with limited computer knowledge, I was able to do questionnaires, do sign-ins, do things like that. But God, nowadays you think that someone would just make an app or make something so much easier to do this, but it has yet
Yeah.
to escape us.
No.
Um, and again, that mindset, that training has to be like the organized. Okay, let's sit down. I'm teaching. This is what we're doing, and I think it's because of our experience, both, those of us who have done both volunteer and paid. When you're a career fireman and, okay, it's time to train, let's go train, we go train. Or the lieutenant could be driving down the street and say, stop the rig, let's stop and talk about this building, and comes back and records all that.
Right.
Where, in a volunteer department, that action happens. But
Right.
I can't tell you how many times when I was chief, I would drive by the firehouse or drive by one of the firehouses and the rig wouldn't be there, and I'd see a stream of water somewhere, and pull up and they're flowing water and and nobody's recording any of that.
No. And that's what you do is you have to kind of make it convenient, and that's why I say it's almost like putting a little pre-plan form together for a single page, right?
Right.
Just get the objectives down, what the skills were, what the equipment was, and a basic couple sentences of what did you do? Because the other thing that I've been trying to do recently, I have ISO evaluations coming up in both organizations. So Sarah Chafee, who's the regional rep down this way, I actually brought her in for a conversation, and I asked her, how do you evaluate training? Because if you look at ISO, it's a huge portion of your score.
Right.
And we're looking to reduce our ISO scores in both communities. So with that, I started asking her pointed questions about where and what do I need to do to garner the most, credit. And she said, the biggest thing that people miss out on is structural firefighting hours. And my thing was, well, if we're outflowing water and stretching hose, those are ours. And she's like, yeah, but it's the way you write it up. And you have to learn about those things. And the only way to learn about it is to invest some time in educating yourself and calling people like that to speak to them. It's the same thing when I do my training schedule with our group, right? Or even at work. The first thing I do is pull out the Connecticut OSHA requirements, right? You got to have a base. And where's the first place you're going to get fined or you're going to get cited?
Right.
So you might as well start off where it's going to cost money for the department and where you're going to be, as the officer responsible for making sure that your people are competent and they're doing what they should be doing on an annual basis. That's basically the Bible that I start with. And then, we'll work around the other things, the nice to haves. I mean, every survey every year, the number one item asked for in any fire department is live fire training. I don't care who it is, because we just don't see enough of it,
Right.
and we don't get to work with our skills enough. And I shouldn't say that. The Valley, as Mike Lombardi says, the Valley burns, right? So, but that's an anomaly for most people in most departments, unless you're in a city department that's got a dense population. You're seeing a couple fires a year if you're lucky. So I think, you have to start off with what are and look at what the weaknesses are. I mean, you can see when you bring your people out in the field when they do things, and that's where you start to work on it. But you know, that's kind of how I design my course, and I make it seasonal, right? Based on what the season we're approaching. Like you would hope that people have already done CO, chimney fires, those things. You're working on ice rescue now. We're coming into the winter, and you're looking at the equipment and the stuff you're going to use because you want your people to refresh.
Right.
And I try to build my skill sets around that. I know everybody loves January and February for their bloodborns, all their required training, whether they're doing it online or whatever it may be. That downtime, it's tough here in New England to get out the door some nights because it's absolutely miserable. It's too cold. We don't want to, ruin equipment, and we don't want to discourage people coming out. So those warm nights you're spending inside, and that's probably the worst time of year that you're going to get inundated with death by PowerPoint.
Right.
I mean,
and it's, I hate to say it though, it is, like you said, like we just started our ice stuff. We just, we're knocking out CPR. We're going to knock all that out. And it
right.
just, it's the way that I guess we operate around here is to shut down. Holidays are coming, right? How many times you hear that?
Yep.
Well, after the holidays. And then right after the first of the year, it'll be too cold till right around, March when we'll start picking up again.
Well, and this time of year is our most vulnerable time, right?
Right.
For
It's our
fires.
busy time, right? I was going to say, I mean, God, the buff networks around here have just been alive.
Right.
Past few days.
Yeah. I mean, you just got to look at social media and you'll know that there's been an extremely significant increase in fire activity in the last 2 weeks.
Right. Now you joined, what'd you say, 1980?
Yeah. Yep.
So do you remember like your first fire?
Actually, yeah, I remember what really struck me back then was the night I got sworn in. I got a helmet, I got a 40-inch coat, I got pull-up boots, and I got a pair of the fireball gloves. And they said, you ride on the back step, keep your mouth shut, keep your eyes open, your ears open, and when you get off the truck, stand on the side and we'll tell you what to do. And I was like, wow. And the next day I was at the firehouse and we had a reported building fire, literally a half mile up the road. It turned out to be nothing, but, it's one of those things that, number one, your dad's already in the department. There's pressure on you to know what you're doing because you've been hanging around the firehouse. And here it is. The first time you hear a call, you're like, oh my God, it's actually a fire. And thank goodness we showed up. It was burnt food on the stove, was no big deal. Set up a fan, sucking it out. Of course, the smoke back then, we didn't do positive pressure ventilation. Nobody knew what it was. And the other thing was there were no requirements to be an interior firefighter. My first fire, I was 17 years old and it was on New Year's Day. And it was literally, I've been blessed. My family, we live on a lake in Trumbull. And the fire was across the lake and I could see the header when I left my house. And, and I was riding in the officer's seat at 17 years old with my uncle driving. So it was very eye-opening. Let's put it that way. And at 17, going into a fire with not a lot of experience, you listen to everybody and they guided you through. And we had just gotten hoods, if you can imagine that, in 1981. We had a very progressive chief at the time, Doug Doyle, who was kind of a trendsetter. And he had gotten us hoods. And thank goodness, because somebody stuck a nozzle in a vent hole and it really beat the guys up because it was an attic fire. And this guy's ears were saved because he had a hood on. So, and we're using 2As and low pressure hose. And I mean, it was, let me say it was fun, but it was, it was scary too, because you didn't have, training was basically going out and pulling hose and throwing ladders. That's what we did every week. And the old timers were very disciplined. They were all, post-military, World War I, World War II. They were not nice to you. They were very direct. They didn't care about your feelings, but they made sure that you were going to be taken care of and that you were going to learn this trade and you were going to be very good at it. That was one of the functionalities I really learned first. Cleaning ashtrays, sweeping floors, washing and waxing rigs, wearing a uniform to drill. We actually had uniforms and bell caps. So they were very militaristic, which I thought is something that set me up for a really good base. And it didn't matter that my dad was a member because every one of them was my dad.
Right.
So.
And that was 1980.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter was president.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gas was 86 cents a gallon, the national average.
Yeah. And there were no automatic fire alarms.
Right.
Very rarely.
Yeah.
The inception of the smoke detector was just coming to place. So
nice.
It was a great time to grow up in the fire service.
And then now with that, when did you become an officer?
1986, 87. I graduated college. The Nichols Fire Department's been known since World War II of having people that live at the station. So I had started living at the firehouse at the young age of 16. We were allowed to sleep there on the weekends if we had a C or better. We had to have a signed note from our mom or dad to be able to live there on the weekend, and we would bring a sleeping bag in. Because we had eight guys who had already had residence there. We had assigned bunks, and they were people who moved out of their parents' homes but wanted to live in a fire station. Not really like a live-in program in the Marylands like you hear about. These guys lived there 7 days a week. They had a locker. This was their house. There was no alcohol allowed. There has never been. If you went out and you indulged, you found somewhere else to sleep. They were very disciplined about those things, and they were very, very serious about the job you performed. We had our own training Sunday mornings, what we called the night crew. Your responsibility was to go out on the road and train, go know the apparatus, know the district, know your hydrants. So we were, it was a really tight bunch of people, and I lived there for on and off for 8 years. So, and most of the guys that I lived with either went on to become career guys somewhere and later chiefs. Most of them are still chiefs somewhere.
Nice.
So, yeah. and we still to this day have people that live there intermittently. It's not like it used to be. It's a different generation now. Commitments, people don't even want to be married. So commitment to the firehouse at times can be difficult, but living there also comes with rules and regulations, and that can be tough for some.
Right. And now, speaking of officership, you one of the more known, well-respected officers, chief officers in the area, and I'm sure that this in both the volunteer side and the career side comes up a lot to you. Is what do you tell new officers? Like, what advice do you give them? What nuggets do you want to make sure a new officer knows?
Well, the first thing was what my grandfather told me when I was growing up. Do unto others as you would want it done to you. And I think respect, dignity, making sure that you're prepared every day for what your responsibility is. Read about your job description. Know what it means. I think there's a few things in the service that I think people don't look at as seriously anymore. When we take an oath is a commitment, a significant commitment to say you're going to do more and to say that you're going to commit yourself to leaving everything that you touch better than you found it. And that you want to be a positive role model. When you make a mistake, you own up to it. And you want to make sure that you take care of your people. And one of my biggest things was knowing the families of those that I was responsible for. That was a big deal for me, understanding that if I made a decision that hurt or killed somebody, I wanted to make sure that, that family would be taken care of. And I used to say to guys all the time, don't study to be an officer, or don't try to move up in the ranks unless you can handle that responsibility. This isn't a title that you just get and you go to Taylor Tins and buy a new front piece. This is a serious commitment to making sure that you're doing the job responsibilities. That was one of the cool things in my volunteer department in Nichols. We've always been assigned responsibilities. They broke up the responsibilities of the organization and delegated it. And, your mailbox that you have may say your title, but it tells everybody what your job is. And they know what your responsibilities are, and it's public knowledge. So I think you have to take it very seriously, but you also have to understand what's expected of you. And I had some super mentors on the volunteer side. Like I said, Eddie Amatrudo, Doug Doyle. I mean, there's a million chiefs and people that I was with in Nichols and in Westport with Chris Ackley and a ton of great chiefs there. And, it just, I was very fortunate to be surrounded with quality people that demanded excellence. And I think that's a word that we don't use as much anymore. The public has no idea what to expect when you show up, right? We talked about that before we went on the air. And I think that they deserve better some days than what we deliver. And you have to look in the mirror, right? I said that I wanted to create an officer's mirror. And I want that mirror to hang in the office or in the firehouse when you walk in. And it says, are you living up to the expectations that you sworn to do? And, that's a reality every day you walk in the office. My going into the Wilton Fire Department or into Nichols is, what can I do to improve? And what audience am I not reaching? And how do I make that impact to reach them? And you have to listen to your people. I think I get humbled all the time, because the other thing is, a lot of people don't believe in the generations. I hate to tell you, but those old guys believed in me. Even though they weren't nice, they believed in me, because they wouldn't have treated me the way they did and gave me the knowledge and the time and the effort. And I think that we have to realize, don't complain about them. Build them up. Give them a reason to excel. Our new people have all the tools. We can't blame them because they may not have the mechanical aptitude, because, to be honest with you, industry and science have changed it. Nobody's using carburetors anymore, right? Batteries. I mean, because a kid can't change a blade on a chainsaw, it's probably because his father didn't have one either, or it was electric. I mean, let's be honest. And, we still have gas motors in a lot of our equipment, but that kid may have never seen a gas motor. And he has no idea about combustion and how it works, and 2-stroke and 4-stroke and, 50 to 1. And there's a lot, but that's our job, is to mentor these people and to build them up. And I think if you show them those small things, that you care about their progression and their success, they'll blossom. I mean, I see it in our place right now. We've taken on a bunch of new people. And the other thing that we do is, every Saturday we have coffee at our firehouse. It's something that our brand new chief, Jason Mumbach, started during COVID. And we have members that are 70 to 85 years old that are there every week. And he mandates that our new people show up and meet them and listen to the stories and build the tradition of excellence through them knowing our history and why we're the department we are and why we do things the way we do them, and respect for those who came before you. And it's just over coffee. I mean, it's something as simple as that, and listening to the stories of tradition, and excellence. And I know you guys in the Valley have a lot of that with your dinners and the way you do things. And I think those are the things that get people to buy into our industry and really take off. And, but showing these younger people a little love and showing them that we believe in them goes a long way. I really do believe that.
And I'll tell you, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I talk a lot in my program about the roles and the responsibility of the fire officer, the fire chief. And, this time of year, you have a lot of departments where it's the end of the year, the beginning of the year, you're switching officers. And there's a few things that, grind my gears, but like, how many times you heard someone say, well, why'd you run for officer? Well, it was my turn. Nobody else wanted to do it.
Yeah.
That's not the answer. If your answer is it was my turn, it's not your turn.
No.
And I just, I feel that that's something, and again, like you growing up in a family, but not only a family of the fire service, a family of fire chiefs, and being around a lot of those older fire chiefs and understanding that, the lead from the front mentality, and that it's about them. It really, you don't see that a lot of days. And I even, translate that over into career departments where you see, guys with a couple years on the job, like dying to be a lieutenant or taking a lieutenant's exam.
Yeah,
And it's the same thing. It's like,
I agree. And I'll give you an example. In 2011, when I was in line to be the next chief, I kind of did a little test. We had a member of the organization, 64 years in the department, gentleman by the name of Gilbert Stanley, who suffered our only line of duty death when he was chief. We had a member who had a cardiac arrest at a car fire. And I asked him if I could go to his home and meet with him. And I knew he was a buff. He still listened to the scanner and everything. And I said, Chief, I said, do you know why I'm here? He said, I absolutely have no idea. I said, first, I'm here to ask you, am I ready? And I said, I'm here to listen about what you're going to tell me about what you went through when you were chief. And I know it's different times, but what's the one thing that you would change if you could change something? And he said, don't ever let anybody die on your watch, because I still live with it to this day. And that was in 1973. And he was still bothered by that in 2011. So when you look at the significance of the impact on that gentleman, it's pretty significant that he was still living with that guilt that someone died on his watch. So I think the seriousness of being an officer and taking it seriously, and realizing that your decisions can be the difference in somebody's life, and also a positive or a negative outcome. You still there? Dave? What'd you do? I don't know where I lost you, but yeah. I'm sitting here and I go, hello? Well, cut it off wherever you want. Oh, this is the best episode ever. Wait till Whittick finds out about this.
Oh my God. All right, are you there? Are you still there?
I am now. I'm back.
I don't even know. It still shows recording. All right, fans, we've had a
Minor glitch.
small thermal exhaust port right below the main port that apparently it wasn't protected well enough. I don't know how much of this we recorded, so uh, it just still shows recording. It doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna find out.
All right.
So anyway, so like I was saying, I just feel, and I apologize because I know I'm gonna have to actually chop this episode together. Yeah, wait till Whittick finds out about this one. I'll never hear the end of it. Uh, I I just feel that the overwhelming majority of, I should say overwhelming majority, but a lot of officers don't understand the seriousness of the position.
Yes, agreed 100%. And I will say this, um, until you are put into a situation where you make a difference in an outcome, where you save a life or you witness the loss of a life, right? I don't, and your training really does come into play, right? It's that day when I like to say that your tongue almost touches your buttocks, that you really realize that everything that you tried to prepare yourself for, you did the best you could with the experience and the background you had, and that if your people have been mentored properly, they will perform and follow you. If they haven't been prepared properly, it's going to be a long, horrific day. And we try to minimize those outcomes, right? And this time of year in the career service, we know it's fantasy firehouse. I used to call it that, right? I'd go in and look at the lineup and hope like hell it was going to be a good day.
Right.
In the volunteer fire service, it's the same way. You don't know who's going to be on the fire ground, but if your training's been consistent, your curriculum's consistent, your people understand, their responsibilities, whether it's through riding positions, however your department lays out its plan for the specific incident you're about to confront, the outcome is going to be more successful based on the regulations, the SOPs, the guidelines that are in place, and the direction that the officers provide. There's no question. Every day in the fire service, the officers make a difference. Right. And I think the other thing that I will give you, because this was very humbling to me many years ago when I was in Westport. I had a good friend of mine, Pete Nicchio, which I'm sure you know Pete. He does some PTSD presentations. Good guy. He came up to me one day and asked if he could run the weekly training, and that they wanted me to step back and allow other officers to step up for the day and run the training. And he had laid out a whole, detailed list of how the training was going to happen, what we were going to execute. And he said, "You're going to be the back step guy, and you're going to wrap the hydrant today, Chief. And we're going to let people fail, because that's what we need to do." And he got that out of his military background. Right. And it was extremely enriching for me that day to watch, lieutenants try to move up and be a shift commander, because that typically didn't happen. And, we try to do that when we do our live burns or we do other scenario-based training, is to let the younger officers actually feel what it's like to be in your position, because there's a lot of times in the volunteer service they are. Correct. And you don't want it to be their first day. So allow them. And I to this day, I still thank Pete for, coming in my office and asking for permission. But it really opened my eyes to show me that maybe we hadn't prepared our lower ranking officers enough through scenario-based training to allow them the ability to operate and run incidents, because typically they always depend on the chief being there. Right. Or a higher ranking officer, and they don't feel that they're ever going to be put in that position. So,
or as every promotional test I've taken in my life, the chief is delayed by light rail traffic.
Yeah. He's at some stupid accident, or he's at town hall, or he's doing or city hall, and he's 15 minutes out, and you got it. And I think that also has to be in the forefront when you're comfortable with your people. Let them fail. Failure is the only way we all learn. We've all failed. I'm going to tell you, it's very humbling to do something wrong, or to show up and screw up and go, wow, I never would have thought of that. That was going to turn out that way. But boy, for the next time, I really got to put that in my, I don't want to say slide tray, my thumb drive or whatever, based on
you can't date your overhead projector.
Yes. Yeah. Or opaque projector.
Yes.
So, but those are some words of wisdom, I think, as an officer and as a training officer. Know your people, but let them give you input annually. I think that training questionnaire took us to a different level, that our people felt that they had input, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And we really learned what we didn't even see what they were talking about, some of them. And my best presentations, I feel to this date, or people that I've hired to bring in, were based on the recommendations of members of my organizations that, were at firefighter level that said, hey, I saw this guy, or it was a great presentation, or, I think we need work on this. And, when you bring that instructor in, you just watch those people who made the recommendation really, there's a level of respect they have for you because you've listened.
Yes. And I think it's important, too, the other thing you mentioned, bringing in outside instructors, right? And I
Yeah.
always say, like, you take Derby, right? And you take our lineup and you look at what I could field for instructors and experience between, guys like, my brother, Louis Alloa, Ryan Hart, guys who, are well-known instructors and they're well-known. But if I bring them in the Derby to teach, forcible entry, it's still, one of us that we all grew up with, and who's in the back making a paper airplane, who's doing fooling around. But if I bring a different guy in who's teaching the same topic that's from a different department, it automatically gives you a little bit more respect. And it's just human nature, really. If you know the instructor,
absolutely.
yeah. And I think that's another thing, too, is, and again, you don't have to go out and spend top dollar to bring the biggest name in the fire service in. You just go to your, look around in your bigger towns. I mean, we're very fortunate in this part of the country because we sit between, New York and Boston and everybody in between. So we have a lot of it.
Yes.
So it's another tip. It's just, look out there and see who's out there, see what programs they present.
Yep.
And ask, is it something that we should be doing? I know this guy, he does a great volunteer incident command program. I think you may have taken it.
I did. I did.
But,
and it was good because it makes you look, your experiences are different than everybody else's.
Correct.
And the uniqueness is, even though he may throw some Star Wars things at you that not everybody's, up to snuff with, it does make you look at the way that your operation does things. And it does bring a different light, and the guys are interested to listen to other opinions.
Yeah.
And whether it's at work or at home, we probably bring in a dozen to 15 instructors a year from the outside because we're tired of trying to put together a program.
Right.
And we want it to be fresh information for our people, and you're right. Around here, when you look at the training companies that we have in this area, with some of the people, they're very reasonable, and you're going to get a great night of training.
Yes.
So, and for a reasonable amount of money.
All right, so we're getting long into the episode. I think
Yes.
Let's get to the part that everybody wants to know. You and I are some of the few people on earth that bared the burden of having to manage Danny Mascola. How much do you think that affected you health-wise?
Well, first off, Dan was never on my shift, but the only times I visited the chief's office were with Dan when he worked on my shift. So, but I will say this about Dan. As much as he could bring excitement to our shift from that perspective, right? And I never thought I would sit with the chief as many times as I did. His background, his education, him being the eighth wonder of the world, literally, if you know him, by looking at him, how his legs support that massive, beautiful body. He's a guy you want there when the crap hits the fan.
Have you ever seen him in the water?
Only when it rises. I watch the shore.
It's majestic watching him. He does, superhuman feats in the water. I mean, his family, they grew up on the river. He was in the water all the time growing up.
Yep.
I'll tell you, I would put him, he's done it. He's done it on quals. He's done it,
Yeah.
And we always joke, like I said, having the burden of manage Danny for a few years, You're 100% right. I've told people in the past he's a great friend. We grew up a few houses down. I said he's inappropriate sometimes. He's difficult sometimes. But if something happens to me or my family, he's the first phone call.
Yeah,
And
he's the only guy that makes an ice commander look like a leotard.
you're right about that. But and he's I know I can't wait for this to come out because both of our phones are going to blow up.
Oh, I know.
But
I love him and his family.
He
Great people.
I actually want him on the show, and I've been asking him to come on the show because I know the work he does with the mental health, and I know
Yes.
what we've gone through together. And Danny, Danny was my partner on the ambulance for decades, and we took a beating some years, and I think it caused our group to be tighter.
Yes.
And Danny was the the driving force behind that side of it. And
I would
that's what I
agree.
want him to come on for.
I would agree. He's a special person in many ways. But most importantly, he does have a gift.
Yes.
And he's a solid guy. And I have a ton of respect for him. And I'm blessed that I got to work with him.
Yeah. He's like I said, his knowledge base, he retains stuff. It's actually, pretty amazing. Yeah.
It's a nice way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things we could talk about there, but
no, I know.
I'd have to click the explicit button when I upload the show if we did.
We'd have to go to executive session.
Yes, yeah. So again, I have him coming up soon too. So I'm
Okay.
happy to have him coming up. But thank you, Chief, for your time tonight. I hope you enjoyed it.
Listen, I was flattered to be considered to be on the program. I think that you're doing a great service for the fire service by speaking to people and getting information and feedback. Because I think you're on the media that younger people want to listen to. And I think the topics you're talking about are the things that need to be addressed that really are the base for a good fire department. To build a house, you got to have a foundation, and the foundation's always built on training and tradition. Those are the two things that separate fire departments. And, I think you're doing that. You're bringing some great people on, and I love listening to your podcast.
Thank you. And then I look forward to the roundtable with yourself and Chief Thode.
And a couple others.
Trasky,
yeah. Maybe Jimmy Trasky.
Yeah.
I look forward to watching you splice whatever the hell happened tonight.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll try to. I have no idea. I'm looking. My wife texted me something happened with the TV. I don't know. We had some kind of some internet failure, but probably Russians.
Yeah, it's either that or a super moon over Derby.
Something. Yeah. Well, Chief, thanks again. Everyone have a good night. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You have no idea how important it is to feed the social media machine that you like, subscribe, and comment on the show. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Reach me through social media, or you can email me at thevolleychief@gmail.com. Chief John Plofkin, I'd like to say thank you. You've always been there for me whenever I needed you, whether it was operationally, equipment-wise, when we did our stint together in the hazmat team. So, Chief, have a great night, and thank you.
You're welcome, David. You too. Happy holidays, everybody.
FD1's back in service. Commands terminated.